What's something you've never tried and never will? I don't even post selfies in the first place, but sometimes I wonder if I'll be sad I didn't take more when I'm older. People don't take photos of me that often, and I feel bad that my kid might have a small number of images of me when I was young. I've started thinking about taking photos of myself just for me, my kid, as a result, but meh. I'll get around to it someday. I'm 27, my mama died this last October at 70. I'm the youngest of a lot of siblings, so not as much energy when I came along. So many pictures of my mom doing fun stuff with my older siblings, not so many with me. Some when I was little, but not many. My mom hated having her picture taken even. I wish I had more pictures of my mommy. I wish I had some of her and I when I was an adult, but I have none. You should take those pictures with your kiddo. You never know. I cherish the few pictures I do have of my mommy. They're like gold to me. I'm taking a lot of photos of and with my kids, and I plan to create some printed photo books for our bookshelf. So just nice private memories or something to pull out to show family when they come over. Will be nice for the kids to have those books in the future, I think. All my parents' photos are sitting in boxes that they never did anything with, so I don't have many growing up that I know about. I hate having my picture taken ironic since I'm a photographer. I also have anxiety about making my kids feel as if they need to perform for me. I need to just ask them if we can get photos together, just so afraid to make them feel awkward. I take lots of photos, never share them to social media, but we make albums every so often. The kids love looking through photo albums, and they're still young. They'll probably not be interested when they get a little bit older, but I know they'll appreciate it as adults. Always enjoy going through all. I only have photos from my childhood that were taken on film or printed. We switched to digital cameras when I was about 9, and then the computers that had the digital photos were stolen a few years later. Only the ones printed remain, and the rest are lost forever. So I'd recommend taking lots. Digital storage is cheap. Make sure to have backups in different locations and print as many as you can. Digital prints are a lot cheaper than getting film developed, and many services you can just upload to, and they'll send the prints to you. It's well worth it. I don't take pictures of myself either. There used to barely be any evidence floating around of me at all. My girlfriend really likes taking photos with me, so there's a bunch she took of us together, but maybe like 2 that I took of myself. And those were for work ID badges lol. I don't know she and I are gonna have kids, but if we do, they'll only have photos of me and her together. Dad won't have many solo photos. I take selfies constantly. I never post them, have nowhere to post to. Sometimes I send to my boo or my friend's siblings if I am doing something fun in it. Usually it is just on my phone. This includes naked ones. I want to be able to remember my face, my body, all of who I am right now and moving forward. A while ago I saw one of those look back things where someone took pictures every day for a year, and it's cool to see the change. I've started trying to take a picture of myself every month or so because the little changes add up over time. It's neat to be able to track hair growth. I don't post them anywhere, just keep them for my future self. Also, there was a mole that was looking kinda funny on my shoulder, and I was able to find a picture showing it before, so I could kinda compare the difference. It ended up being nothing, but it was nice to have. May need to end up documenting more of my moles for that purpose, especially the ones on my back that I don't see often. Skip the middleman and send them directly to your friends in a group chat, just like I do. The other day, I sent one to a mate because the ending of the most recent Kirby game actually made me shed a single poetic tear. Personally, taking pictures of myself crying actually cheers me up. Because I'm like, look at this wonker trying to take a picture where they don't look like a gremlin as they ugly cry. I throw up the peace sign too. Just makes me giggle a bit and feel better. Then sometimes send them to friends to start I feel awful, are you available to cheer me up conversation or ages after the incident, because I think they're funny. It makes sense to broadcast your wins. It's something you're proud of, whether it's a song, a job offer, a vacation you saved up for, a body transformation you've been working on, or even a smile that you've been trying to get right. Yes, it's for attention, but I don't think it's an inherently bad thing to want to share your success and get recognition for it. I love seeing my friends share their success. it can definitely be taken too far in this attention economy. But as far as the opposite end of the spectrum goes, why would you want to broadcast your sadness? What's the purpose? What are you trying to get from your audience? My ex-girlfriend broke up with me about 4 days prior and started regretting it. Instead of messaging me as any average person would, she created a separate Instagram story and only added me, then posted a picture of herself fully bloodshot, bawling her eyes out with some said caption, I don't really remember. Obviously, reached out thinking she was going through it, and we got back together later that night. I later found out all this after she told me on a long car ride home from a concert. I was discussing how I still was looking out for her during this period, because she was going through it mentally and emotionally and would reach out to her if she ever needed anything. She then told me that the whole crying story and caption was basically made by her so she wouldn't be the first to reach out, and she basically was crossing her fingers that I would respond to her. That cave exploration hobby where people squeeze through tight spaces. I tried once. There is a cave like that in Norkel where you literally have to crawl squeeze through. Halfway through I started getting claustrophobic, which I have never experienced before. It's so dark and your headlamp is useless as it only illuminates the rock that's 4 inches from your face. Closed my eyes, imagined I was in a beach, and calmed myself down before getting out. Never again. Worst part is you cannot back out. Once you start, you have to keep going. You're on your stomach crawling forward, and you cannot turn back or crawl in reverse. So only way out is to finish the whole thing. As this is Norkel, I was super paranoid of small earthquakes, which are pretty common here. My worst fear was a tiny earthquake when I am down there. That would have 100% made me shit my pants. You're always gonna have problems lifting a body in one piece. Apparently, the best thing to do is cut up a corpse into 6 pieces and pile it all together. And when you got your 6 pieces, you gotta get rid of them, because it's no good leaving it in the deep freeze for your mum to discover, now is it? Then I hear the best thing to do is feed them to pigs. You got to starve the pigs for a few days, then the side of a chopped up body will look like curry to a pisshead. You gotta shave the heads of your victims and pull the teeth out for the sake of the piggy's digestion. You could do this afterwards, of course, but you don't want to go sieving through pig tea now, do you? They will go through bone like butter. You need at least 16 pigs to finish the job in one sitting, so be wary of any man who keeps a pig farm. They will go through a body that weighs 200 pounds in about 8 minutes. That means that a single pig can consume 2 pounds of uncooked flesh every minute. Hence the expression, as greedy as a pig. Actually surviving a shot to the head is much more common than you might think. A terrible thing having to live through that. Also, it's not an instantaneous death. It could drag out over a day or 2, depending on how much blood you lose and what part of your brain gets hit. However long it takes will feel like an eternity in agony, as your mind tries in vain to come to grips with what you've done to yourself. The brain is a resilient yet fragile thing. My husband's old EMT partner told him a pretty horrific story about this. He was in the military and was hanging out with some friends. Some of them started talking about playing Russian roulette, but one guy was really opposed and said he wouldn't play. The guy with the gun told him too bad, held the gun up to his head and pulled the trigger. The gun went off and killed him instantly. The poor guy didn't even want to play and ended up being the one to catch the bullet. Heroin. I work in healthcare, and man oh man, does that stuff destroy families and ruin lives. Had a former CEO of a multi-million gaming company who was living in 3 feet of rubbish pots and pans filled with cigarette butts, urine, and shit. He was happy as Larry, content to just inject every day and steal stuff to fund it. His toilet had a literal mountain of poo piling out of the top of it. I love my job. I saw a toilet like this once at the Arby's on Canal Street in New Orleans a decade ago. It was at like 10:30 in the morning, and my friends and I were hungover trying to get something to eat. I was nauseated because I had drank like a half-gallon of Thai bourbon tea mixed drinks the night before, so I was going to go to the bathroom to throw up and clear my head before lunch. The bathroom of this particular Arby's was on the 2nd floor, so I soldiered up the stairs and went in. Because it was summer in New Orleans, and this Arby's was cheap as hell. The bathroom was like 90 degrees inside. The wall of heat and horrible smell hit me hard, so I threw open the first stall I could reach and saw the pile. Now, this pile had broken the plane of the toilet seat. It was a mountain of 50 shades of brown, from the darkest blacks to the sickest greens. Judging by the raw quantity and variety of color and consistency, it was clear that several artists had suffered for this masterpiece. There was some toilet paper bunched up on the southern slope. My favorite part was that some cool guy had stuck a spent cigarette out of the side, opposite the toilet paper near the top, almost like a flag on Mount Everest. Seeing this and smelling this, I had no time to switch stalls. I just unloaded my 7-hour-old red-pink gut liquor on top of the monstrosity. The cigarette butt was dislodged in the hailstorm. I moved stalls in between volleys, and when I was finished and feeling better, I started laughing maniacally at what I had seen. I went back downstairs to the lobby giggling with a 1,000-yard stare. My friends asked me why I was laughing like Beavis and Butthead. Oh, nothing, he. I'll never forget it. I went back a couple of years later to check on the pile, but alas, that Arby's location was closed down. Kind of unrelated, but this reminded me of something from when I worked at a grocery store. Went into the bathroom and found that someone made an absolute mountain out of all the toilet paper. After cleaning it up, we found a Ziploc bag with a slice of pizza at the bottom. This store did not sell unfrozen pizza. Also, once I was shitting in that bathroom, and a guy came in and started jacking off to his own farts. Not even in a stall or anything. I had to sit through it, because I was scared to leave the stall. I was just a boy when I encountered this log. At the time, didn't realize it would be in the unlikeliest of places. My mom took me to the Houston Zoo during the summer. The heat and humidity were ruthless. Most of the animals just lounged in what little shade they could find. My mom also brought my nieces with us, so while they were busy watching the elephants splash water on themselves, I wandered off to the Timberwolves exhibit. Now, the heat had been bad, but in the dank back corner of the zoo, there was absolutely no wind and even less shade. We had crappy, overpriced hot dogs from one of the few food stalls at the zoo. The pink lemonade was sickeningly sweet. As the first grumbles hit my stomach, the sharp pain in my gut made me begin to frantically search for the restrooms. I took a sharp left heading down the dusty path. And around the next bend, I saw a beautiful sight, but I was quickly disappointed as I walked into the restrooms. Only slightly cooler than being outside, there was a terrible stench in the air. The ventilation fan that was mounted at the very back of this cavernous bathroom was caked with dust and rust. It was obvious no cleaning or maintenance had been done during the off-season. Or maybe it just committed suicide from the heat and stink of 1,000 shtis. There were many stalls to choose from, but most of the seats were caked at dried urine. Each yellow splashed seat more terrifying than the next. But more terrifying than that was the pain in my gut, knowing I'd better figure something out or I was gonna end up ditching my underwear. I found a stall that had a surprisingly clean toilet in such a dump. But just as I reached down to start undoing my belt and pants, I spotted a heartbreaking sight. No toilet paper. F***. I screamed, but no one heard me, or maybe they had and didn't care. Either way, I frantically went from stall to stall. Some empty, some pissed on the empty and urine-stained rolls mocking me. The last stall to down from the stall I thought was gonna save me. The lack of airflow in this shitty shack caused me to break a sweat. It was pouring from places I didn't even know I could sweat. I threw the door open, the latch smacking the tile wall. I stood frozen in horror. The whoosh of the door being flung open agitated a cloud of massive black flies. They scattered and swarmed the stall. They rose up, almost blotting out the overhead light. Then I saw it. A giant log of drying and nearly petrified shti rose out of the bowl by several inches and stood neatly straight up and down. It was like a car wreck. I didn't want to see it, but I just couldn't look away. The flies didn't even register anymore, and for some reason I got closer. As I looked down into the maw of hell where this thing should have been, the base was completely occluded by an equally impressive amount of toilet paper. My reflexes took over, and I tried to flush it, but this only moved the TP. And then I realized that this thing was not only long, but the base was at least 3 times larger than the hole at the bottom of the bowl. The pain in my stomach was back and more ferocious than before. I snapped out of the daze this thing had me under. Look over and found gold once more. Half a roll of 2-ply TP. The locked holder kept me from taking the roll, so I furiously wrapped as much as I could around my hand and retreated to safety. I did my business, cleaned up, and was about to leave, but I went back to look one more time to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from the heat of the day. Finally relieved, drenched in sweat, I turned to leave just as another person came in. I panicked as I realized it looked like I was coming out of the stall where the log calls home. I panicked and ran out. I thought everything was behind me, but nope. As I found my mom and nieces, a young zoo worker comes trotting over to us. He came from the direction of the tea shack. He looked at me up and down. He then turned to my mother and said she might want to take me to the doctor as I had clogged one of the toilets with my massive tea face palm at the age of 10. I swore at this man in the middle of the zoo. I told him there was no way that something that large came out of my ass, that even most grown men couldn't aspire to that level of grotesque, that my theory was that some Sasquatch had lumbered in there and dropped that log off in the last few days, and that it obvious that no one cleans that restroom because they should have found it, and the 7-foot-tall motherfucker that left it. My mother demanded to see what he was accusing me of. She got the manager of the zoo involved. I just wanted to jump into the lion's pen and let him end my suffering. Nope, I was dragged back to the stall of shame with a now mob of dozens of people. The murmurs and whispers were deafening. I point to the stall I used as it was nearly spotless. As things finally began to quiet down, and people shuffled out of the smelly and oppressive heat of the cave, the manager apologized as it was obvious the log had been there much longer than a few minutes. He offered us a bunch of free passes and vouchers for free food. About that time, an army of janitors came shuffling up the sad, dusty path with cleaning carts and a big brown box, written on the side, industrial ventilation fan, 220 volts. We were escorted to the manager's office where he produced 4 yearly passes and an entire stack of food vouchers. My mom, being a single mother on a budget, she snapped them up before pushing us out of the office. As we were about to leave, the manager caught us and offered to let me and my nieces pick stuffed animals from the gift shop. Once in the car, my mom asked what happened. I spared her the details but told her that I was looking for toilet paper and had found the only dry, clean roll in the stall of horror. I had grabbed some, cleaned up, and as I was about to leave, I went over to wash my hands. Someone came in, and I guess it looked as though I had been leaving that stall. We drove home, and that was it for a while, but every time we would go to the zoo, we would laugh as my mom reminded me not to leave any logs laying around. I'm past the age of drug experimentation, and too scared to get addicted to try hard stuff like that, but heroin does spark curiosity. How good must heroin feel if people are willing to live in a hellscape as long as they keep riding that high? A lot of drugs seem like they are used as an escape from terrible conditions, but heroin seems to be one that rich people forego their wealth to just get another fix. It may be the same with meth or crack, but the stories are rarely of a downfall from a great height with those drugs. Difference is probably just the chic factor, but still, it is fascinating. People seem to have decent lives, try heroin, and literally stop caring about anything but the high. Food, sex, family, nothing, just the high. So it begs the question, how good does it make people feel to completely take over there? How good it makes you feel when you take it is just half the equation. The other half is how horrible you feel without it once your body's used to it. If you've ever had narcotic painkillers prescribed to you that were strong enough to make you feel happy, floaty, euphoric, that's more or less the feeling from heroin. Heroin has different distribution channels from pharmaceuticals, obviously, which is why people start on it versus going with pills, morphine, etc. If I were someone determined to get opioids today, for whatever reason, without ARCs to get any at a pharmacy, my only option would be to try and buy it off the street from a stranger who would be selling heroin and fentanyl, because that's what they have in stock. Not enough legitimately prescribed pills are being sold on the black market. So someone tries heroin once, feels great, can probably just come off it that first time without withdrawal symptoms, but they want to feel that good again, so at some point soon they acquire and do more. Maybe this time they do it for a longer duration so they can extend the feeling as long as possible. At any rate, a few days in a row of using heroin, and someone will discover that when they start coming off of it, the problem isn't that they no longer feel as amazing as they just did. It's that they now feel increasingly horrible in new ways: fever, body aches, panic, and anxiety, feeling like the worst flu you'd ever had just sent its big brother to occupy your body, in quite a contrast to how they had just felt. But if they can get more, not only do the horrible withdrawal symptoms go away, it's also back to being happy and on cloud nine. Heroin users who seem happy and content are only so because at that moment they've had their fix. Spend a day with them where at some point they don't have access to it, and you'll see a whole different side to that person. For you and me, doing heroin vs. not is the difference between feeling euphoric and feeling normal like we do right now. For a heroin addict, the difference between doing more heroin is a choice between feeling pretty good or feeling so horrible you want to die and would do anything to get back to normal or pretty good. What's sad is there are a lot of people in that trap who want out, and to say it's an expensive habit is an understatement, but getting into treatment is a lot more expensive than buying enough to make it through one more day. Someone deep into heroin is often only in a position to keep funding their habit bit by bit, but not get into a good treatment program that goes beyond lock them up in a room and let them suffer the physical consequences because they deserve it and might learn from it. Had to help bury my best friend's sister a couple of years ago. She went from one extreme to the other, super straight edge and dumping a guy just for being a pothead in her college years, to later dating an abusive drug dealer, to doing S3X work for heroin money, to dead in the span of 5 years or so, and left behind a 4-year-old child in the wake. P.S. FAVC, the predatory funeral industry also. Swapping and wheeling and dealing and trading burial plots like they're used cars and trying to guilt grieving families into either dropping $10,000 on a casket or essentially burying their loved ones in a tin can, and implying the latter is less dignified while making their pitch. It's the right decision. I am addicted to it since 3 years ago. Angle at the beginning. I feel so proud of not wasting my life because I have a work, good grades in the college, other hobbies, and healthy friends, but the physical damage becomes more and more notorious. It's the right decision. I am addicted to it since 3 years ago. Angle at the beginning. I feel so proud of not wasting my life because I have a work, good grades in the college, other hobbies, and healthy friends, but the physical damage becomes more and more notorious. I don't know where you live, but there's likely help available if you're willing to reach out for it. If you want to work to drop the addiction, it's worth the life you can have on the other side. A very close friend got in deep with that shit. Honestly don't know how he didn't die. It had to have been close. His parents reached out and finally got through to him. He moved back home away from all of his druggy friends, and between their care and support and other groups in the area, he's made a full recovery. Even was deep cleaning his car a few months after moving home, found some of the shit in between some folds in the carpet, and his immediate reaction was to suck it up into the vacuum cleaner and forget about it. He's been clean for a bit over 3 years now, and hasn't touched anything stronger than very occasional weed or a beer since. He does smoke cigarettes, use them to get off the meth, and he's now using the nicotine patches to try and cut back on that. This is glossing over a whole hell of a lot of work and anguish and sweat and tears. You have to really want to quit it, and that is very difficult to do. But anyone who says there is no way to escape from meth is wrong.